Good evening, everyone. All right, so this session, we're still looking at the Jan 2023 paper. However, we're going to topic by topic in great detail, so you could always go over using other questions or other papers to understand it. Now, functions and relations. Now, what we have to understand will do, send me a message on the WhatsApp. Now, with respect to functions, they may give you F, G, H. Those are the common letters they use for your functions. Now, F of X, G of X, H of X, you could also see it represented like this. Right, you could see it as this, where they are telling you F is such that X is mapped onto, and they give you whatever it is. So if you see it in this form, all you have to do is just to rewrite it into this form, right? So just a heads up. If you guys see it in that form, you just put it into this form, which we're accustomed to. So they told us that f of x is equal to 4x minus 1. They gave us g of x is equal to x squared minus 5, and h of x is equal to 3 to the power of x. Now, what we have to understand is that when it comes to my functions, my f of x is actually y. Your g of x is actually y, but just y of another graph. Your h of x is actually y, except for another graph or another line, right? So these here, it's actually the y values of 3 different graphs, right? So this is the first one. They use the different letters for you to distinguish that it's 3 different graphs that we're relating to. Now, do you remember when we used to work with y is equal to mx plus c? Just an example where you could have substituted the value of x, right? So let's say x is 2. Wherever you have x, you substitute it. And when you solve this, given m and c, you would have been able to find the value of y. What you have to remember is when it comes to functions, it's the same concept, right? So like, let's say they told you f of 2. This simply means wherever I have x, I am going to substitute 2 in it. Right, so in a case like this, let's say they told us to find f of 2. So that will be 4 times 2, right? Your box is going to act as a bracket, right? Because this is 4 times x. So it'll be 4 times 2 minus 1. So 4 2s are 8 minus 1, that's 7. So in this case, it comes like saying, on this graph, my value of y when x is 2 is 7, right? So f of 2 is 7, or basically at that point when x is 2, y is 7. So anytime they give us anything inside of these brackets other than x, we are expected to substitute whatever it is wherever x is located. All right, so let's look at the first one. Same thing for g of x. If they ask for g of 3, wherever you have x, you're going to substitute 3. Same thing for h of x, wherever you have x, and they give you, let's say, h of 2, wherever you have x, you're going to substitute 2. Right? So basically with functions, at this stage, it's just substituting. All right, so let's look at the first one. So on your answer sheet, be sure to write A8, A part 1. So you number your questions accurately, right? Be sure to number them accurately. Just in case, let's say you had to move on from this one because you can understand it, label them accurately. So when I come back to it, if you have time and you go back to it, the person correcting your booklet could find it. So look at this one. They said, find g of x of minus 2 in the simplest form. Now, this simply means wherever I had x in g of x, I'm going to substitute x minus 2. So g of x is actually x squared minus 5. So where I have x, I'm going to replace my x with x minus 2. So they told us to find this in its simplest form. So it's going to be x minus 2 all squared minus 5. Now, some persons, they'll go through the long way, but they'll say x minus 2 by x minus 2. And then they'll say this by everything inside of the second, and then this by everything inside of the second. So you'll say x times x, that's x squared. X times negative 2, that's negative 2x. Negative 2 by x, that's negative 2x. And then negative 2 by negative 2, that will become positive 4. So I could simplify these. So I'll have x squared, add and keep the sign, so that's negative 2x plus 2x, that's 4x plus 4. So some students are going to do it like this, which is fine. Right? Don't forget, after my x minus 2 all squared, I have to minus 5. Another way we could do this is anytime you're squaring, the shortcut is square the first term. x squared. Square the last term plus 4, and then 2 times the first times the second. Right, so 2 times 2 is 4. Negative 4 times x will be negative 4x. Right, so that's just a shortcut. So either you expand it a long way, or you do the rule. Square the first term, square the last term, and then 2 times the first times the second in order to give us the middle term. Sure, if I wrote it as a formula, it'll be square the first term, square the last term, and then 2 times the first times the second. So b times x, that's bx times 2. All right. All right, so looking at this part now, I have x squared minus 4x plus 4 minus 5. I have the whole numbers here, so I could simplify that. So I'll end up with x squared minus 4x, 4 minus 5, subtract, keep the sign of the larger, so we'll get minus 1. So in its simplest form, this will be the solution. They never told us to solve it. They said, find it in its simplest form. And when you hear simplest form, you think of reducing. All right, so tell me once I could continue by putting the letter F in the chat. All right, so in its simplified form, we know it's going to be x squared minus 4x minus 1. Let's look at the second one. All right, so for the second one, we have f inverse of 11. All right, now, anytime you see the inverse of a function, you have to remember that you have to lick. L-I-C. Now, before I go into find f inverse of 11, I'd like to find f inverse of x first. Right, so I'm going to find f inverse of x. So the first step is you are going to let y equal to the function. Next, we're going to interchange x and y. So wherever you have x, you put y, and wherever you have y, you put x. And then last step, you're going to change the subject. Basically, make y the subject of the formula or the function. All right, so I know f of x was given as 4x minus 1. My first step, it tells me to let y equal to the function. My next step, it tells me to interchange x and y. So wherever I have y, I'll put x, and wherever I have x, I'll put y. And then my last step is I want to change the subject where I'm going to make y the subject of the formula. And in order to do so, I'm going to carry everything else across the equal sign. As you cross the equal sign, you perform the opposite operation. Right, so I want to get y alone. This 4 was multiplying, so when it goes across, it's going to become dividing. So when I made y the subject of the formula, that is actually f inverse of x. Right, so I just replace my y now with f inverse of x, and that's x plus 1 over 4. Now they asked us for f inverse of 11. And you know, it's just all about substitution. So 11 plus 1, that's 12 over 4. 12 over 4 is 3. All right, so f inverse of 11 is equal to 3. All right, so let's look at composite functions. Now, composite functions, it simply means a function of another function. All right, so do you remember? So let's say they gave us f of x is equal to x minus 2. And let's say they gave us g of x is equal to x squared. Now, we know if they gave us something like f of 2, it just means wherever I have x, I'll replace it with 2. So I could replace this with, I could replace x with whatever is here. So it's basically just substituting. So f of 2 in this case could be 2 minus 2, which is 0. Now, composite functions, you might see something like this, where they might give us to find f of g of x. Now, what I like to do is I like to look at my first function first. That's, we could call that the dominant function. That's the function that we're working with, right? So it simply means wherever in f of x I have x, I'm going to put g of x in it, right? So I go and substitute the whole of g of x where I have x, right? So wherever I have g of x, wherever I have x, I'm going to put the whole of g of x, which is x squared. Let's try another one. Let's say they give you to find g of f of x. Your first function, that's the dominant one we're working with, which is g of x. So it's going to be g of something. And where I'm replacing my x, I'm going to replace it with f of x. So wherever I have x, I am going to replace it with f of x. So I'm basically just substituting the whole of f of x into it. So it's going to become x minus 2 all squared. So basically, wherever I have x in a composite function, I'll be substituting the entire of the other function in its space. Let's look at another one. They may also ask us to find something like this one. How about g and I'm going to put g and f of 2. Now, if they give me something like this, I like to break it up. So I'll work out what is this part first. Right, so like if they give me g of f of a number, I'll work this part first. So I'll find out what is f of 2 first. And f of 2 simply means wherever I have x in the f of x, I'm going to put 2. So that becomes 2 minus 2, which is 0. So that will mean that instead of f of 2, I'll have 0. So g of f of 2 is actually the same as saying g of 0, because f of 2 is 0. So wherever I have x in g of x, I could substitute 0 there. So it will just be 0. Sure, I could try it with a number other than 0, other than 2. So you'll see it clearer. So let's say they gave us g of 3. My dominant is g. But remember, I have g of 3 here. So I could find out what is g of 3. Remember, g of x was x squared. So g of 3, wherever I have x, I'll put 3. So I'll end up with 3 squared. 3 3s are 9. So g of 3 is 9. So I could actually replace g of 3 with 9. So now I can substitute 9 into my x, and that will be 9 squared. 9 9s are 81. So g of 3 is 81. All right, so let's look at the examples. Yes, so basically you're just substituting. So they asked us to determine the value of h of 1. Remember, they gave us that h of x is 3 to the power of x. So what we can do first is we could find out what is h of 1, which means wherever I have x, I'll substitute it with 1. So that's going to be h of 1 is 3 to the power of 1 is 3. So we then have h of 1 is 3. So I'm now going to find h of 3. So that means wherever I have x, I'm going to substitute it with 3. So it's going to become 3 cubed. 3 3s are 9. 9 3s are 27. So h of 1 is 27. All right, so they gave us another function and they represented it in the way that I explained before, which is f is such that x is mapped onto x squared minus x minus 2. Now, even if you see it like this, don't let this confuse you. All this is saying is f of x is equal to x squared minus x minus 2. So it says complete the table below and plot the graph for the function f of x is equal to x squared minus x minus 2. Remember, your f of x comes like y. So what you normally do, if you treated this as y, same thing you do. Right? So this comes like your y. So if I had to find this, wouldn't I substitute -2 wherever I had x? So when x is -2, my f of x value or my y value is going to be -2 squared. That would be 4 minus 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 becomes a plus. So we'll end up with 4 plus 2, that's 6, minus 2, that's 4. So this here will be 4. I'm going to substitute x as 0. So wherever I have x, I'm going to put 0 in it. So 0 squared minus 0 minus 2. So that will be minus 2. And that was it. Then they asked us, they gave you the scale. If they give you the scale, you have to use their scale. Right? So you have to use their scale. All right, so I'm just erasing this part to get some room on it. All right, so this was 4 and this was negative 2. So they said use a scale of 2 centimeters to represent 1 unit on both axes. So you measure your 2 centimeters. Right? So you could use your ruler if you want. Depending on the graph, after a while you'll like know, okay, well, this is 2 centimeters. However, let's say your particular graph book, you know that every 2 blocks is 2 centimeters. And let's say you get a different graph book or a different graph page for exam. You just use your ruler and you measure it. So every 2 centimeters is 1 unit. Right, this will be 0, negative 1, negative 2. Then the same on the y-axis. Every 2 centimeters is 1 unit. No, this one you have to sketch the graph. They gave us the equation as y is equal to x squared minus x minus 2. So in a case like this, remember we got some values of x. We substituted it into the formula or the equation in order to get the values of y. And then we have to plot these points. So we're going to plot these points. So x is negative 2. So you locate your x is negative 2. So this is my line, x is negative 2 here. And when x is negative 2, my y value is 4. So where those 2 points intersect, that's going to be my point. So I'm plotting my curve. Look at the next one. Negative 1, when x is negative 1, y is 0. Sorry. Yeah, y is 0. So that's going to be this point here. So you're plotting the curve. I use x's. Some persons, they use dots. But if you use dots, you circle it. Next one, when x is 0, so x is 0 here, y is -2. So y is -2. This will be -1. And it will be -2. So that means it's going to be down here. And then the next one is when x is 1, y is -2. And then when x is 2 here, y is 0. And when x is 3, y is 4. So you locate each point and then you plot, you connect your dots. I am unable to get it perfectly with this, right? But you guys form your curve. Now, you see everything you do on your graph paper that they give you, do it in pencil, okay? One, besides, if you make an error, you can't erase pen. Two, you use pencils for these. All right, so tell me if it is that we have any trouble with this one.